strong a tool that is to connect with your audience and spread the good word about you. And as school owners, and as whether you're a single school owner or a chain that you're running, PR is important for everyone. And this is something that industrialists, not just in our country, somebody like Ratan Tata to Bill Gates, everyone swears by. And here are some famous quotes by them. I especially like the one by Bill Gates where he says, if I was down to my last dollar, I would spend it on public relations. So that's really the importance of public relations. And I would love to share more about public relations with you today. So the topics we will cover today, firstly, to start with, what is public relations? What are the different tools that are a part of public relations? How do you deal with a media interview? And how you can build strong media relations, which is again going to flow from there. And also interesting thing is about how do you handle a crisis. So a lot of things for us to cover in the next 30 to 40 minutes. And I hope you enjoy this session.
Before we go any further, Divyata, I would like to do a little bit of a mood check with our audience. Audience, right now on your screen, you would see a poll. Please do engage with the poll. The question is, do you know how to use public relations to strengthen awareness about your school? I will give about 30 seconds. Please, all of you, please participate and pour in your answers. All right, thank you. I am going to flash the result on the screen just in a bit. But just to give you a little bit of an insight, Divyata, 56% of our attendees have said yes, that they are aware of how to use public relations to strengthen their school brand. But about 44% have answered in a no. And I think this session would really help them to sort of, get a better understanding of how to leverage PR to sort of, bolster their school brand.
So I think we have an interesting mix of response. Great to know this. I think they're nearly 50-50. Some of you know about it and some of you don't. But and I will try my best that by the end of this session, all of you are experts at public relations. So let's begin with what public relations is. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to school admission is a great word of mouth experience that you can have for your school. And what better than using media as a tool? So what public relations does is it helps you in managing your reputation and improving that amongst your target audience through the power of media. This is actually a way of a third-party endorsement that you get for your school, as opposed to advertising where you talk about your school yourself. But here it is media that is talking about the great work you're doing. So that leads to building trust and credibility amongst your target audience. And while you get this trust and credibility, the best part is that this comes at a very low cost or no cost at all. So I think nothing can be better than that, right? And in case there is a crisis or you are in a difficult or a negative situation, PR can help you minimize that as well and help you navigate through the difficult situation. So that's the power of PR and the power of media if handled well. So that is, we are going to talk more about that in the following slides. Now, the most important thing for us to understand right at the beginning of the session is that this is a planned and sustained activity. You cannot expect that PR will start giving you results in a single day. This might take as long as 1 year to a couple of years for your school to actually start seeing the benefits of media relations or public relations, as I would call it. So you have to be building media relations on a continuous basis to maintain that goodwill for your audience, to get a thorough understanding about you. And ultimately, you will be able to use this tool to influence behavior of your audience. So like we say, this is a Lego approach. There are a lot of pieces involved here, and all of that have to come together over a period of time for you to actually see the end result of the great work that you're doing. So let's go to the public relations tools. Some of you may be familiar with some of the tools mentioned here. There's press release. You must be familiar with media interviews. Then there is authored article, and then press events. Now, these are the most popular tools in PR, and I will tell you more about these. Let's start with press release first. Now, whenever you have an important announcement about your school and you want this knowledge to go out in mass media, when I'm saying mass media, I mean you want, many people to know about it. And this is something you may want, uh, not just in your own city, but maybe even neighboring cities around you, or maybe at a national level if you have a chain of schools. So press release is the best method to use in such a scenario, and it has many advantages. You can control the messaging here. So what you will ultimately see in the newspaper about you will be exactly what you wanted to communicate. So which is why we say this has controlled messaging. This can really bring very strong visibility for you at once, because that one press release will get published in multiple publications. This is very helpful in influencing opinion and behavior of your audience. But yes, like I mentioned, it takes time to build that. And the most important part here is how you actually end up writing the press release. So let's begin with the headline. I'm sure all of you read at least one newspaper in the morning. And whenever you read, when you open the newspaper, your attention will first go to the headline of an article. So just like that, and basis that you choose whether you want to read the whole article or not. And exactly like that, you have to have a very exciting headline, attention grabbing headline for your press release to ensure that the audience, or in your case, mostly parents, want to read the entire article. So have an exciting article. Make sure in the first paragraph itself, you're able to share the entire news announcement that you want to make. So answer things like what is happening, why, when, where, and how. Let me give you an example here. For example, admission season is here, and you want to share with your audience that there are very few seats left, and admissions are going to close soon. So your headline could possibly say that, for example, XYZ school closes admission by 5th of April, only 500 seats left, or only 50 seats left. So that can be an interesting headline. And the first paragraph will talk exactly about what is, when is the admission process ending, what is the way of doing the entire admission process, how you're going to go about it, and when will the admission results be out. Very important here is to also have a spokesperson quote. Now let me explain who a spokesperson is. A spokesperson is a representative of the company. Here, my recommendation is that the school owner or the principal should be the face of the school that you're representing. And the quote essentially means is the key message that you want to deliver about your school, and that should essentially be captured in the quote or the message, like we say, from the principal or owner. And at the end, very important that you share contact information, so that if the journalist wants to have more information about what you're messaging, you can share more details. Another thing that is important is that you include image along with the press release, as you can see in the examples given here. Have a nice picture which gives a visually appealing feel to your press release, and the audience can understand better about what your announcement is all about. I'm also sharing here some examples of when you can use a press release. So this can be a student achievement. A student from your school may have entered in a national or a state level competition and has won the competition there. That is something that you can talk about. This could be a school event, an annual day event, or possibly you're having SLC, or which is the student-led conference, and you want to talk about that in your city, or there is a dignitary visiting your school. So these are some examples of when you can use a press release. Here are some more examples. Now let's move to media interviews. This is a very popular one because you get to interact with the journalist one-on-one, and this could also be on TV sometimes. And who doesn't want to be seen on a television set, right? So yes, media interview, very important one, and I would say one that requires the most practice and preparedness as well. And also comes only when you have a good one-on-one relationship with the journalist and you understand the journalist and the media publication well. This gives the audience a better and a more personal understanding of what you're doing and how you are going to change the education environment for your city, or the chain of schools that you're representing. This is a great opportunity for you to share key message that you want to deliver and talk about, especially, for example, the admission season is going on and you want to talk about how your school provides multimodal learning, or you want to talk about the great infrastructure that your school has, which maybe none of the other schools in your city are already providing. So these are some of the great ways in which you can talk about some of those aspects in detail. Now, here are some more examples of when you can use an interview. And those are some of the important days that you may be celebrating at your school. Or this could be some of the important trends that are going on in the industry. Now, there are many trends on an ongoing basis that you see in the education industry. Sometimes this trend could be exam season coming up, and students are stressed and how they can deal with it. You can talk about such things, how to handle student stress, or you can also talk about trends. For example, when schools had just reopened, and what you were doing around that time to ensure safety of students, and how you're going to take all the precautionary measures to ensure that the school is going to be a safe place for students to come. These are important times when you can use a media interview to reach out to your audience. And of course, success stories. That's the other example. Whenever your school has achieved something great, and you want to, again, of course, connect with your audience on such an occasion, you must, connect with key journalists in your city and take this opportunity to talk about the success. Some more examples. These are examples of LEAD itself, where spokespeople of LEAD, the founders, have gone to media to talk about the important milestones or announcements related to LEAD. Now, I did talk about this earlier, that interview, like I said, is something that comes with more practice. But even before you practice, you have to be very well prepared for it. So preparation is key. You need to know what you want to go and talk about in the interview, then practice it, because what you might have as a thought in your head might not come across in a similar fashion when you're speaking to the journalist. So try and practice what you want to talk about during the interview, and that is what will lead to a good performance and a good result ultimately. Now, let's go to an important part, which is how do you structure a media interview? Now, just like a press release, you lead with a headline and you have to make sure that that is the most important aspect. The same theory of funda you have to also use for a media interview. Try to talk about the most important takeaway that you want the journalist to have right in the beginning. So don't really start with talking about introducing your school first, talking about when it started and how many years you've been running it for, what is the infrastructure and things like that. Directly come to the point first. What is the most important aspect that you want to convey to the journalist, and then support it with facts, and then come to the premise or the intro about your school. That will really get the journalist engaged into what you want to talk about, and also make your story very interesting. And uh, this is what we call as the inverted pyramid.
Divyata, before we proceed further, we have been getting very interesting questions, especially about around media interviews. We have someone called Ria Hariramani. I hope I got your name correct. And she asks, if I want to be interviewed by a media for my school's activity, but not too sure how much information is to be shared, is there a way I could prepare myself and the teachers in advance?
Sure, Ria. Thank you for that question. That's an interesting one. I'll hope to cover it in the coming slides. So uh, I, I, I will share how that is done and how much you need to share.
All right. And just one more thing, Divyata, a lot of the attendees are asking if they would get a participation certificate after the webinar. So yes, there would be a participation certificate that would be mailed to you along with the PR guide and the recording of this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Divyata.
Thank you. Okay, so now the golden rule of a media interview is to deliver your key message at every opportunity you get. And how this is done, I will share techniques for that. So some key points is emphasize on what you want to talk about. So it's not how much you talk about, but what exactly you talk about, and how you're able to have the conversation around what you want to speak about, and uh, let let the journalist not lead the interview, but try and weave in your key messages to ensure how you are able to talk about what really matters to you and the school. So there are ways of doing this. For example, say, while you're answering the journalist questions, don't ignore his questions. Definitely listen to what the journalist is saying and answer his questions. And then say something like, well, I would like to stress an important point here and talk about the key message. Or, use a method line. Before we move on to that topic, let me tell you that admission season is here and admissions are fast closing. So these are some ways in which you can ensure that you are able to control the interview, and also ensure that you are able to talk about what is important for you and the school and what you want to see ultimately in the newspaper or a TV interview that you're giving. Now, like I mentioned, there are various techniques here. Let's begin with the bridging technique. What I just explained was more of a bridging technique. So yes, you answer a journalist's questions and then say, but additionally, I also want to say that, and come to the message that you want to talk about. There are other ways also of doing this. For example, the journalist might be asking a very vague question, which is not even relevant to what you're saying. So use this bridge method to actually go to the path that you want to go, and which is why we call this the bridge, because it helps you go from where you are to where you actually want to go. So say that, oh, I don't know about that, but what I really want to tell you is, or what I really want you to know is that um, students in our school have fared 25% better than what they did last year. And, and a message like that. So that is the bridging technique. And we have an interesting example to show you here. Started at the
Hi, attendees, we are fixing the audio. Just give us a moment.
Point that you see in the way education happens today at schools, and why do you think it needs to change?
See, if you think about it, in the last 75 years of our independence, the one industry or one segment which has not innovated is schools. We still teach the traditional way. Classrooms are still lecture halls. Students still learn from textbooks. All our information has moved to multimodal, but schools are still single mode, lecture based, rote learning. And I believe that if schools don't transform, our students will not be able to achieve their true potential. And if our students don't achieve their true potential, India is not going to achieve its true potential. So I know the mission is bold, but I think it is absolutely necessary that someone takes the cudgel of transforming schools.
So essentially what you're saying is students have been trained to memorize but not to acquire skills.
So I hope it was. So that was a very interesting way. If you heard that, the journalist was trying to focus on the challenges that the industry is facing. So Sumit not only did he address the challenge, but he quickly went to the solution and how multimodal learning and the new techniques of teaching is going to transform and how LEAD is working towards it. So that's a great technique, to use, whenever you think the journalist is not going to get into what you want to talk about, and you can use the bridging technique. The next one is steering technique. Now you all know what a steering wheel is, and so many times while driving there is a pothole ahead, but what you do is you maneuver around it and you continue driving. That is exactly what steering technique also does. Whenever you feel that the journalist is giving you a tricky question and you want to bypass that and move to what you want to talk about, these are the ways in which you can talk about it. So say, well, another important point is that, and go to your key message, or say, that is not really the key issue. The key issue is, and move to the point that you want to talk about. So this is the steering technique, very tactfully, something that you have to use very tactfully. But if you practice this well, you will realize that even the journalist will not notice how well you use this technique and change the topic completely. Hooking technique. Well, this is my favorite technique. Try to see that the journalist is not controlling the interview, but you are. And the best way of doing that is the hooking technique. Talk about something so interesting that the journalist forgets about what he or she wanted to talk about, but you are able to lead the conversation by, focusing on what you want to talk about, just like a hook does. It pulls you towards where you want to go, and that is what it is. So, for example, start talking about multimodal learning. The journalist might not know what multimodal learning is and would then want to know more about it and might say, please tell me more about this.
Divyata, you're on mute.
Sorry, I feel like I'm facing a bit of a technical issue. Is my screen working fine?
Yes, your screen is working fine now.
Oh, all right. So coming to the next technique is the flagging technique. Very, very, very important. Sometimes what happens is the journalist might totally digress from the topic that you want to talk about. And it might just be moving in a direction that you're not interested in at all. In such a case, bring the journalist back to the important topic by using the flagging technique, which is, saying something like, so whatever he might be asking, say, but you know what the more important issue is? That students today, that most schools today are using rote learning. Now that is a way of bringing back the conversation to a point that you want to focus on. So use some of these phrases mentioned here to flag off the important issue and bring the conversation back in the direction that you want to take it in.
Divyata, while we are on the topic of media interviews and the various kinds of techniques that you're discussing, we have some very interesting questions around that area. Tanya C, she asks, how do you know which announcement work in the media? Our goal is to reach our parents and students. So how can we do that with media announcements?
Sure, thank you, Tanya. That's an interesting question. A lot of it will come with practice. Also, look at the announcement from the point of view of your audience and try to understand, is this something that your audience would want to read? Is this something that will be worth their time? And not just the announcement, what is more important is um, how you structure the announcement, how you make it interesting. And if you're able to do that, any announcement can be made into a newsy item. So yes, this is something that will come with practice and will come through your own experience as well, which is why I mentioned in the beginning that, PR is a process where you have to invest time, and this will be a long drawn process, and you will see the benefits of it.
Divyata, we have another interesting question from Vidhi. She says, she asks if there is something which we do not want to disclose to a journalist or to the media, but the media keeps on, insists on sharing that detail. How should we tackle it?
So in such cases, firstly, you have to understand what is the key issue and which media house this is, and accordingly you have to look at ways of tackling it. And you can use some of these techniques that I mentioned here. For example, the steering technique can be used here, where you quickly go about talking about some other important issue that you can probably bring to the table. Those are some of the ways in which you can avoid difficult conversations. But at the same time, if you think this is a topic and your audience would also want to know this, it is best to clarify this in the most appropriate way. So I'm understanding sometimes this happens in case of a crisis communication, and it is very important that you clarify to your audience what is happening if sometimes something goes wrong, but you are taking corrective measures to correct it. That is how you should address these issues.
Thank you, Divyata. Before proceeding, we'll just take one last question from Ritu Puri. She says, she asks, other than media, what is the role of social media in public relations?
I will be coming to that in the coming slides. So I will take that. Thank you for that question.
All right. Thank you. Over to you, Divyata.
So these are some tips to ace an interview, especially if you're doing a TV interview, because you have limited time here and you want to ensure that you make the best of this time. So establish the context, set the context of what you want to talk about, affirm, and like I mentioned, restate your key message whenever you get a chance. Respond to any accusations that a journalist might be making. This was in line with the question asked by our participant Vidhi, and correct any factual errors. Sometimes a negative question also gives you a chance to convey the correct information, which maybe the journalist has misunderstood or the public at large has misunderstood, and this is your chance to um, let the audience know about what actually happened. If there are vague questions, sometimes you might be asked a very vague question. Try and rephrase that question to make sure that you are able to answer and deal with that question well, and clarify any misquotations. You don't want to be positioned as somebody who you're not, or some message that you're not trying to convey. So the point here is be very, very clear in what you want to say and ensure that you are delivering the key message that you want to. Now, here are some media do's and don'ts. I think this is a very important slide that will really help you understand how you should be ready for a media interview. Be yourself. Look normally at the interviewer. What happens is sometimes we are very conscious during a media interview, and it is but natural. It's not very easy to handle a media interview, but and what we've often noticed is that either we maintain too much eye contact, where we end up staring at the journalist, or we completely avoid making eye contact. So just as you would be talking to anyone that you do in your daily life, maintain the similar kind of eye contact when you're speaking to a journalist. If you think the interview is getting too tough, don't try to hurry up. Instead, slow down, and this will give you more time to think about the answer or the response that you want to give. The other thing is, keep your answers short and crisp. Don't use the interview as an opportunity to go on and on and on and talk about something. Ensure that you're crisp so your message is delivered and the context is clear. Be yourself. You are the expert. You know more about your school and education than anyone else. Use this opportunity as a means to educate not just the journalist, but the audience that you're catering to. And the best way to do that is by being yourself and expressing the knowledge that you have. Now, some don'ts. Lack of message focus. Like I mentioned, you have to be prepared and know what the key message is. So if you're going to lack focus and use that interview to talk about everything that you want to, that will not work. Focus on the specific interview and what is the specific message that you want to go and give out to the audience. Just because you're going for an interview, don't think you will talk about everything that your school is offering in one single day. Focus on one aspect that you want to talk about, or at the most, keep in mind 3 messages that you want to talk about. Avoid sharing any stuff that you don't want to see in the media. Be very careful of what you're speaking. Avoid over answering. Like I said, keep your messages short and crisp. So the opposite of that is don't over answer. Don't go into details which might not even be interesting for your audience. Very important point, something that we see a lot of people doing but is not appreciated, is trashing your competition or bad mouthing your competition. Avoid doing that. Focus on the great work that your school is doing and avoid talking about your competition at all. In fact, even if the journalist is trying to ask you questions about other schools, avoid that topic and bring the topic back to your own skill by using the techniques that I mentioned earlier. And lastly, but very importantly, you have to listen to a journalist very carefully and ensure that it's not just you speaking, but you're making this conversational and interesting for the journalist. So do listen to the journalist and what he's trying to ask you in detail.
Divyata, before we proceed to the next PR tool, we have a very interesting question by Shaukat. And he asks, can we record an interview by someone and post it in our social media because we do not have any access to TV interviews?
Sorry, interview taken by?
So he asks if they can record their own interviews and
Yes.
post it on social media and distribute there because they do not have access to television interviews.
Absolutely. I think in today's day and age, social media is such a powerful tool, and I'm sure a lot of your audience is consuming news through social media. So that is definitely a great way of engaging with your audience. That's a great idea, and you must do it.
Right. There's one more question, Divyata, by Rajeshwari Ravi Shankar, and they ask how to increase the student admission in these way. I think they mean through media interviews or through other PR tools. Will that really impact and bolster your school admissions as well?
Absolutely. That is the whole idea of PR. But like I said, if you start investing in PR and media from day one, it's not like you will start getting admissions from the very next day. So PR is something every school must invest in right from the beginning and use it as a continued process, because when it comes to school admissions, uh, just advertisements are not going to work with you, because media can bring that kind of credibility and trust um, that only PR can provide to you. And parents, parents depend a lot on what they read in a newspaper than what they might only read in an advertising. So yes, PR can be a very important tool for you to gain admissions. And I will share some more examples on how you can do that. So coming to authored articles. Now, authored articles is a great way for you to be seen as a thought leader or an industry expert. Now, when you're talking about an authored article, you're not talking about your own school. The idea is to talk about what are the challenges that are going on in the industry and how you are addressing those. So for example, like you can see on the see on the screen is schools in post-COVID environment. So talk about a topic that, that is relevant for your audience, but at the same time, weave in the key message that you want the audience to understand about you. So for example, if you want to talk about multimodal learning, talk about that through the article. This will help you not only ensure that you are able to talk about the important aspects that are important for a school in a post-COVID environment, but also help you be seen as a leader, because you're not just addressing issues pertaining to your own school, but the industry as large. So a very powerful tool, and something that I would encourage all of you to try and use to the best advantage. So here are some more examples. A lot of papers have dedicated pages to education, and these are where you can have your authored article or opinion article, as they are known as, to express your opinion on a matter. And you being subject matters experts, you can do this very well. But yes, remember, this shouldn't be about your own school, but this should be a topic that is relevant to the industry. Events. Now I'm sure. So, okay, there is a question from Tanya, I can see, who is the authored article attributed to. The authored article is usually attributed to in depending on the topic, you have to decide whether you should, this should be attributed to the principal or the school owner, depending on the topic. Sometimes what you can do is you can definitely take help of teachers in your school to write it, but please try and ensure that the thoughts expressed are that of your own. So yes, thank you for that question, Tanya. Now, leveraging your school events. Now, I'm sure a lot of you do regularly host events, and there are also a lot of events that leaders come up with, and you must be participating in those. For example, championship or SLC. Use these events, or even your own school events. Here are some examples of annual day functions of schools, and you can use these events as a tool to engage with media, invite them to come to your school to get a first-hand experience of these events. And this is when the journalist will actually see what your school brings to the table, and what your school is actually doing, and what are the new age tools that your school is using, or how the students of your schools are more confident as compared to a school of any other school that they would have seen, and how you're transforming the whole education landscape. So this is a great opportunity, but yes, must be very careful about who you're inviting here. I will come to that in the following slides. Know the journalist you are calling, know the media house that they're representing, so that you're confident about what they're going to write about once they want to write about the story or publish this news later. So we've seen that schools use events as a powerful tool to be seen in the media. For example, you can see here a school is celebrating International Yoga Day or even World Environment Day. So even these are occasions where you can invite journalists to come to your school, visit the school, and see the various initiatives that you're taking.
Divyata, before we proceed further, I actually want to take a little bit of an opinion from our attendees. Attendees, you can see a poll on your screen right now. The question is, now that you are aware of the different PR tools, what will you choose for your school? Press release, media interviews, authored article, or a school event? I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer. Please participate.
Great. I can see a lot of people are choosing press release and school events.
Right.
Yes, I think this is a great way to start. Press releases gives you that control over the message that you want to go out, and it reaches a lot of publications at the same time. So great press release is definitely something you should start with and use the most often. School events also. Great.
Right.
I
Very
think great
interestingly,
response.
almost about 70% of our participants have gone for school events, though.
Very interesting. So
Right.
I'm sure you're doing a lot of events, and so that is why you want to use this as an opportunity to engage with media.
Right. The results are on your screen. Clearly, school event is sort of winning. Thank you, audience, for participating.
Thank you for that. Now let's try and understand the media universe, which basically means what are the different kinds of publications that are there. Now we have categorized them into 3 sections. Now what has happened is post-COVID, the way we consume news has changed. Earlier, a lot of us only depended on newspapers or TV channels for consuming news. But post-COVID, that has changed, and a lot of news has gone online or is being consumed through social media. And that is what has changed the entire media scenario. So yes, there are the traditional newspapers like the Economic Times, Mint, Hindustan Times, or even the regional newspapers like Dainik Jagran and Malayalam Manorama. So a lot of those that you must be already aware. There's also New Age today, which are mostly subscription based. So they are online publications and they cater to a very niche audience. So depending on the kind of news, you must also use new age media. And the third is the influencers or the social media, there was a question around this. So please use social media to the best advantage, because a lot of the parent community are mostly spending a lot of time during the day on the various social media platforms, whether it is Facebook, whether it is Instagram or Twitter or even LinkedIn. So use these platforms as a means to talk about the message that you want to give out to the community. Now, here's an interesting thing that I'm sure a lot of you would also be surprised to see. While all of us think that Times of India, Economic Times are probably the most read publications, but that's not true. Uh, India is still in our country is still dominated by regional or language newspapers, as we call them. And here you would see that Dainik Jagran is the one that is at number 1, followed by other regional and language newspapers. And Times of India only comes at number 9. So do not underestimate the power of regional or language newspapers. These, in my suggestions, are going to be most important for you and the audience that you're catering to. So understand your audience and know what is the kind of media that they consume, what are they reading, and what are the different ways through which they are consuming information, and accordingly uh, engage with these publications or news portals.
Divyata, before we proceed further, since we are in the subject of media interviews and reaching to the right people, and of course there's a certain bit of cost that is also involved, we have two very, very interesting questions. One of them is from Satish, and he asks how far this media interview is going to be reached to our parents, because most of the parents will be busy with their respective work and schedule.
Right. So which is why I'm saying you have to use the different tools. Don't just be dependent on one tool, but so while you're using newspapers as a tool, also use social media as a tool. And I'm sure this news will reach your audience.
Right. Thank you, Divyata. There's one more question by Ria. Will we have to pay for such activities to be covered by the media?
No, absolutely not. And which is why I mentioned in the beginning that PR comes at a very little or no cost. What I'm sure some of you would have experienced is that you will get more favorability if you're already advertising with some of the local newspapers, and they will be more receptive to some of the articles that you would want to talk about. So that we have seen happens in regional publications, but otherwise, as PR, there is no exchange of money. There is no money that you have to pay. This is purely based on the kind of news you want to share and the relationship that you drive with the local media. So yes, relationship is very important. And yes, the best part about PR is that it comes at no cost. Now let's, like I said, the important aspect is how you can build media relations, and that itself will help you in getting the story out or the news out. So to begin with, know who you're talking to, understand the media publication and the philosophy that they come with, and also the journalist you're interacting with. This will help you understand what the journalist would actually want to talk about, and you can accordingly tweak your message and the conversation that you want to have with him. Second, don't play favorites. Yes, you might have favorability or affection for a particular media house or a journalist, but this approach sometimes can, lead to an unfavorable experience for the other media houses and journalists. So avoid this method. Have a couple of media houses and journalists to always share your news. Third, remember that media relations is a two-way street. It cannot just be everything that you want to talk about, but also keep in mind the long-term relationship that you're building with the relationship, and ensure that you are able to bring interesting thoughts, and you're able to bring in interesting ideas to the table on what is the need of the hour for education and what needs to transform. And this is what will make your relationship strong with the journalist. So last point also there is, you know, sorry, make it easy for the journalist to do their job. What this basically means is try and provide everything that the journalist would require for the journalist, for the story. So for example, give the written material to the journalist on whatever you have discussed, even after the interview. For example, give them the important facts and figures, provide them with pictures, and please keep in mind that journalists always, they always have a deadline. So provide them this information in the time that you need to. So if 5 p.m. is the deadline that the journalist has mentioned to you, please ensure that you share the information by then. Okay, now this is an interesting part. How do you pitch a story? Pitching a story is basically nothing but how do you sell your story to a journalist? How are you able to convince the journalist about the story that you want to talk about? Again, the same method that we spoke about earlier in the press release or the interview, that is exactly how you're going to pitch the story also. Use the same inverted pyramid method where you start with the, the crux of the information that you want to give, and then come to facts and evidence, and then come to the premise or the introduction that you want to give. Now coming to the most important part is how to be, how to ensure you are a good spokesperson. And these are some of the qualities that you will see in a good spokesperson is, remember that you are the face of the organization and you're representing the school. And so keep in mind at all times, know the journalist that you're talking to. Make sure you're delivering the key message at every chance that you get. Speak with clarity, very important. Show energy and enthusiasm. You're representing your school, and if you are not going to be enthusiastic about what you're talking about, the journalist is also not going to be. Always show a positive body language and be very confident when you're giving an interview. And again, something that I've been saying again and again, come prepared. And last but not the least, stay calm. There is nothing to be worried about. Here we are going to show you an example. Okay, sorry, I think we don't have much time, and so we are moving on. So yes, very important part, and the last section of the session is crisis communication.
Before we proceed, Divyata, and you explain what crisis communication is, I'm very interested to know if our audience has ever faced a PR crisis before. So attendees, you can see a poll on your screen right now. Have you experienced a PR crisis? I'll give you a couple of seconds. Please participate. Divyata, I think you can see almost like over 60%.
Yeah. A lot of you have experienced crisis.
Right. All right. So I think the next subject would be extremely interesting and very, very critical for all of you to understand how to evade a PR crisis. Thank you. Over to you.
Absolutely. So I hope this section really helps you for those who have faced and even those who have not. Because if you're prepared for a crisis communication and you know how to deal with it, it will help you handle the situation better. So let me first explain what a crisis communication is. Crisis communication, basically, what a crisis is basically any negative happening that can impact the reputation of your school. So for example, there could be an accident that has happened, or there is some fee related issue that has happened, or there is some legal proceeding against a school. These are some examples of crisis that can impact your school. And these are times, when you can be in the news for negative reasons. But there's nothing to be worried about. If you're prepared and we have a plan in place, these situations can be handled. And you can ensure that the damage is minimized. So now for this, for those of you who've experienced would know that, a crisis just comes out of nowhere. And at such a time, you are already in panic mode, and then it is difficult to think about how to handle it. So the best way to do this is have a plan in place and be prepared. Plan out all the scenarios that could possibly go wrong and know what are the kind of action steps you would need in such a time. So firstly, the important thing to know is that decide how severe this crisis is. Is this really going to, does this look small, but can this become something bigger and greater eventually? Could this be very damaging? If yes, think about what are the strengths of your school. Think about who's going to be on your side and going to support you in terms of crisis, and going to also support you when it comes to media and interacting with them. For example, it could be your teachers. Your teachers might be there on your side, and then in such a scenario, you have to think about how you can use their support in the best interest of your school, and also think about what are the kind of facts and figures you're going to require in handling the crisis. So then, basis this, develop a plan. Now, a plan is going to include key messages. Key messages, like I'm going to talk about that. Is that, and also think about the key questions that are going to come out. Already, you can already prepare. So, for example, if an accident has happened, that the media is going to ask you about, were students injured, what is the cause of the accident, how did it happen, when was the last time you've gone through repair work in your school. So those are some of the questions that will come from a journalist in such a scenario. So already prepare these questions and the answers for these, keep them ready. Also prepare a statement or a press release ready that you want to share with a journalist or multiple journalists in such a case. Now, even before you do this, what is important is that you have your key message ready. Key message is nothing but the most important way in which you want to answer this and the key things that you want to highlight. Now, it is ideal to have 3 key messages, and also have supporting facts that will help the journalist understand why you're stating these messages. And also important that while you're addressing the issue at hand, you're also using this opportunity to talk about the philosophy of your school and the long-term mission and goals, so that the media is not just focusing on the specific incident, but does know your plan of action or the larger goal that you have in mind. And when you prepare these key messages, ensure that you're giving out the same message in all means of communication. So for example, if you're talking to media about it, make sure on social media also, if you're going to use social media to convey the message, it's the same message. If you're going to share a letter with parents, in case in case of such a situation, the letter also communicates the same message. Yes, the language can be different, or the way you frame frame these documents will be different, but the key message has to be common in all these documents. Now, simple do's and don'ts when responding to media queries. In PR, we say that it's not the questions that do the damage, but it's the answers that do the damage. So be very well prepared for such situations, and do your fact check and ensure that you are communicating well in such a situation. So in a crisis, don't be in a hurry to respond. Hear the reporter out, note down his name, contact details, and tell them that a spokesperson will respond to you. In a situation of crisis, make sure that anyone from your school, anyone and everyone should not be responding. The response should only go from an authorized spokesperson. Also, prepare your staff to not feel that they have to answer to a journalist. Tell them that somebody will get back to you in the given deadline. Nobody from the school, apart from the school owner or principal, should speak to media in case of crisis. make sure that the crisis doesn't, changes the way in which you're going to behave with a journalist. Just like you behave with a journalist when they are coming for a positive interview, in a crisis situation, also make sure that you are polite with the journalist, however difficult the questions may be. Simply hear out the reporter and tell them that you will get back. As far as possible, in case of crisis, avoid a direct conversation, but have all the conversation on email and in writing so that there is no miscommunication. Don't make any of the record statements. Now, what that means is, sometimes we tell information, share information with journalists and tell them कि मैं आपको ये बता रहा हूँ पर आप ये छापना मत. But please remember, a journalist is always looking for some kind of sansani khabar, and any information that you share with them is news for them, and they are only doing their jobs. So please remember that you are only sharing information that has been approved and that has been discussed with management, especially in crisis situation. So these are some simple media do's and don'ts that you must keep in mind. Now, I'm going to show you a video of an interview, which is a great example of what not to do. While you're watching this video, I will encourage all of you to, in the chat window, share what were the errors here and what went wrong.
डैंड्रफ की वजह से भी हेयर फॉल होता है?
जी बिल्कुल, डैंड्रफ भी एक्सेलरेट कर देता है. सो आपका हेयर लॉस जेनेटिक होगा.
फारिग होने पर हमने कुछ आसान से सवाल पूछे. एक नजर डालिए सवालों और उनके जवाबों पर.
बिहार के राज्यपाल कौन है?
बिहार के राज्यपाल कौन?
बिहार के उप मुख्यमंत्री?
नहीं याद, हमको नहीं आ रहा है.
वॉवेल कितने होते हैं? कॉन्सोनेंट?
हम इंग्लिश में नहीं बता सकते.
संविधान किसने बनाया था? बिहार में कितने जिले हैं? पटना के डीएम कौन है अभी?
पटना के डीएम है ये.
आपके डीईओ कौन है? जिला शिक्षा पदाधिकारी?
ये तो है.
बिहार में कितने कमिश्नरी हैं? टेंस कितने प्रकार के?
अभी तो देखिए
टेंस
So yes, as you saw, that was a very damaging interview and must have hampered the image of the school. This was a government school in Bihar, and this news was all over the place. Now, this situation could have been completely avoided. Now, let me share with you what went wrong here right from the beginning. A journalist should not be allowed to enter the school premises without being accompanied by someone senior and somebody who knows what the agenda of the journalist is when he's coming for an interview. Clearly, the journalist already had an agenda in mind to malign the image of the school, and he had come prepared for a negative story. So if you already knew what the journalist and what the agenda was, this wouldn't have happened. Secondly, he's speaking to a teacher, a classroom teacher who is not the authorized spokesperson for the school. So keep in mind that you instruct all your school teachers not to speak with media unless they are authorized. That's the second point. And very important, which I already mentioned, is don't let journalists enter your school premises until they are they are accompanied by somebody senior in the management and somebody who's able to control. In an ideal situation, if the journalist starts asking difficult questions, you can always stop them and tell them that, see, we had agreed for a particular agenda and you cannot be asking such questions, or these questions can only be answered by the principal. So those are the ways in which you can completely avoid such difficult situations. So that brings us to the end, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Divyata. Audience, I would request you to hit the Q&A button on your screen and ask us all your questions, or you can simply put in your questions in the chat box. And while you're at it, I will also be sharing a survey link with you. We would absolutely love to know what did you think of this session so far. So you can see the survey link on your chat box right now. Before we proceed, right now I would like to invite Shalini Bhattacharya on the session. She heads brand PR and content for LEAD. And right now she's going to tell all of you about what LEAD is, what is our core ethos, and what do we do and why do we do. Over to you, Shalini.
Thanks, Neha. And thank you so much, Divyata. Very, very interesting session so far. I learned a lot from the last video, especially what not to do and how to be prepared for a media interview. But while we are waiting for your questions and while you're taking the survey, etc., I just wanted to share with you a little bit about LEAD, who we are, what we do. So we are essentially, as most of you might already know, we are India's largest school edtech company. We were founded 11 years back by Sumit Mehta and Smita Deora. And we exist because of you. We truly and deeply believe that foundational education should happen in schools, should be centered around schools. And that is why the work that all of you as school owners are doing is so inspiring for us. So you can see our mission on the screen. It is to make excellent education accessible and affordable for every child. We believe that excellent education should be delivered in schools across the country and not just, in India's big cities. We're already seeing that happening in LEAD schools across the country. Right now, we're in about 400 cities, 9,000 plus schools, and 5 million plus students on an ongoing basis. And of course, we engage with more than 50,000 happy teachers across India. Can we have the next slide, please? So, when you hear LEAD integrated system or the LEAD system, what does it mean? So essentially, the LEAD integrated system is a combination of three things. One is our teacher capability system, using which we make sure that your teachers are able to become super teachers in class. You're able to engage your students better. Your students move from rote learning to actually understanding and absorbing what they're learning in class. And we empower teachers to deliver this sort of modern multimodal learning. Of course, as I mentioned, the student development system, our main focus is on ensuring that every child emerges as confident, the most confident versions of themselves that they can be, through the kind of proper education that they should attain while in school. And of course, our offering has very strong technology legs. We leverage technology to make sure that your parents and that our schools are able to deliver the best international quality education. Thank you so much, and back to you, Sneha.
Thank you, Shalini. Divyata, we have been receiving a lot of questions. I'll take a couple of questions for you. We have a question by Vijay, and he asked, how can we use this for convincing the parents? I think he means this by PR tools.
So yes, you might be aware of the kind of queries that keep coming from the parents, and address some of these concerns that parents have through the different tools that I shared. So address these concerns through press release announcements by talking about the qualities or the different kinds of opportunities that your school provides to students. Use authored articles to share your opinions on subjects that are of importance to parents, and just like that, other events. And I'm sure these messages will reach to parents through media, and you will be able to reach out to your audience.
Thank you, Divyata. There is one more question by Sajid, and he asks, any agency in particular which can handle our PR, especially digital, newspaper, and magazine? And he wants to keep the price range anywhere between 5,000 to 15,000.
So I'm sure there will be a lot of those in your city, and you will have those. You will have local PR experts who will help you get in touch with local media. I think that's a great investment for you to make if you do have the budgets.
Thank you, Divyata. There is a question by Dr. Dakshayani Sridhar. I'm so sorry if I've forgotten your name incorrect. You're asking if you will get a video recording of this session. Yes, we would be sending the recording of the webinar along with a participant certificate, and this entire guide, the PPT that you can see right now, would be sent across to your inboxes. One of our participants says that it was a very useful webinar, offered many tips to use PR effectively. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the feedback.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone for attending and participating in our webinar. Thank you so much, Divyata. This has been an insightful session. I learned quite a bit from you as well. For any question that we couldn't take today because of a little bit of lack of time, please write to us. I'm going to be sending you a number and an email ID where you can reach out to us, and we would be happy to answer all your questions.
Thank you once again, all of you. Thank you. It has been a great experience for me also to interact with you, and please continue doing the great work you're doing and talking about it with the media, and ultimately that will reach your audience, which is essentially parents.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Divyata. Audience, on your chat box, you can see a contact number and an email ID. Please feel free to reach out to Lead, and we would always be happy to sort of answer all your questions to all our stakeholders. And do not forget to give us your feedback on the Zoho survey link that is also on your chat box right now. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Divyata. Thank you, Shalini. This was truly a very, very insightful session. Thank you.